Hey there, powerful soul. In this season, I believe God is inviting us to reimagine a new vision, a new possibility for ourselves as accomplished spiritual and feminine women, lovers, and leaders. I have been having a beautiful conversation with my adult son, and I wanted to share some of those reflections with you, as I believe it will support you in the season that you may be navigating inside of your life, inside of your relationship, inside of your leadership. And it's a season, I believe, that's being experienced collectively. There's this palpable quality in the atmosphere of newness, of change, of transformation, of growth. And when we are navigating those seasons, it's important to center ourselves and to be grounded in God and to be connected to not just our now, but also our next. So I'm inviting you into my sacred tea time. I was reflecting in stillness, so I'm going to be taking sips of tea as we have this conversation together. If you're new here, welcome. If you want to let me know you're new, that would be amazing. And if you feel that what I'm sharing ought to be shared and you share this, I would really deeply appreciate that. So I was having a conversation with my adult son. He's in his last year of undergrad and he's navigating some challenges. He's navigating some experiences that are causing him to have some thoughts about, is this really the correct path for me? Is this really the direction I want to go in? Is this really what I envision for myself in the future? And first I want to read something to you that I shared with him and then just kind of go from there in this conversation. And so I said to him, I believe in you and I believe you're capable of anything, no matter how challenging it may seem. You're a very intelligent young man and you have greatness within you. Do not allow moments of frustration to cause you to forget that. Now, I believe when we are navigating these pivotal moments inside of our journeys of womanhood, inside of our relationships, inside of the work that we do as feminine leaders, it's important to not lose sight of not just what's happening now, but the bigger picture. And admittedly, I have been there. This last year has been one of those seasons for me where I really slowed things down inside of my spiritual business. And I decided to slow down to speed up. I decided to realign myself. I decided to reposition myself. I decided to check thyself and correct thyself and notice where there was misalignment. Notice where I was not congruent with myself and my calling. Notice where I was showing up in ways that were not authentic, but rather performative. Notice where I was doing what I thought I should do rather than being led from my soul by Holy Spirit. Noticing where I was showing up in ways that were self-sabotage. I spent an entire year of slowing all the way down. Now, although I have been still showing up on the forefront and sharing my work and sharing my message and writing content and occasionally putting out different offers, it was nowhere near at the rate and the pace that I used to. There was once upon a time in my business where I did live masterclasses every single month. And those who have been connected to me for any length of time may remember that. They may say, yeah, she was pumping them out. And for those of you who are into human design, I'm a generator. And so I have the energy to do that. I'm very creative. I'm very connected to God. God has given me multiple gifts where I can get an idea like that. And then when Holy Spirit says, go do it, I go. Okay. And in this last year of this journey of my life, in my business as a feminine leader and as a woman, God was inviting me into a deeper level of surrender, a deeper level of trust, a deeper level of let's connect even more deeply to the essence of who you are. Because when we connect more deeply to the essence of who we are, we can connect more deeply to the essence of our sacred union. We can connect more deeply to the essence of our calling. We can connect more deeply to the essence of our business. But when we're not connected to the essence of self, and then we try to go out of order, and we want to make sure that our relationship looks just like so, and we want to make sure that our business looks just like so, you'll always have this feeling that something is missing, or something doesn't seem right, or something isn't working. And often I believe that's a sign that we have somewhere along the lines forgotten first things first, and that the process of co-creating is to be, do, and have. And so I'm having this conversation with my son, and it reminded me about this last year of my journey where I have been on this path of slowing everything down. And while for some it may seem, why would you do that? Why would you go from building what was a six-figure brand to slowing that all the way down and realign yourself, reimagine a new vision? Was because God had reminded me that you're not just creating for now. You're creating for what's next. And sometimes when you are this accomplished spiritual woman and you are driven and you're ambitious and you're high achieving and you have the goal and you know you've got what it takes, and you're going out there inside of your leadership or the work you do in your business, and you're really wanting to co-create it, sometimes you can get lost in the sauce of the noise of what's happening in your industry. You can get lost in the sauce of what's happening collectively in the world. You can get lost in the sauce of your own ambitions. And it can cause you to forget that you're not just creating for now, you're also creating for what's next. And I believe this generation, our generation, for those of us who are a little bit more seasoned, I'm in my 40s, proudly, no shame about it, because I love that I take such fabulous care of myself that I feel good about myself in whatever age I'm in. I believe our generation is the generation that is creating a new generational legacy and blueprint. I believe it's our generation that is creating what the generations that are watching us, the generations that are following us, they are going to model off of whatever we're doing. And I had this knowing within myself when I got pregnant with my son over 2 decades ago, when I was 19 years old. And I realized then I do not want to be one of the ones that repeats my past. And I also don't want to be the ones that repeats my ancestors' past. And I've always been a visionary. I've always had vivid visions. I've always had this really active imagination. I always would get these beautiful desires in my heart and these visions in my imagination, and then had this type of faith that makes absolutely no logical sense that it was possible. And I would go out there and create it. I would go out there and co-create it with God. However, this last year, this season I was in inside of my work, God was telling me, remember, you're not just creating for now. You're not just trying to meet a bottom line in your business. You're not just trying to see how much you can make in a month. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. You're here to create something bigger than that. You're here to create something that your son is watching. I have two. My husband has a son, and so I have a bonus son, and I have a son. We have 2 boys. And then whenever they start their families, we'll have descendants watching how we are co-creating in this lifetime. And they will model after that. And I've taken that on to heart. In this last year, I've really sat with myself. Who am I being as a woman? Who am I being in my marriage? How is my marriage? If someone saw my marriage right here, right now, would they want to model after that? If I had a granddaughter, would she want to model after what she sees? If I had a spiritually gifted grandchild and she saw how I was running my business, would she want to model after that? And I really got honest with myself this last year, and I sat myself down and decided to really seek Creator on the matters of my life, my marriage, and my spiritual business. And what does it mean to not create just for the now, but to also create considering what's next? And it has been the most incredible process because what has been birthed through me would have never been possible if I didn't slow down. The work that I'm going to be bringing forward is going to change so many women's lives, marriages, leadership. It would not have been possible if I didn't slow down. The way I'm able to connect with my son on a deeper level, I believe it's a privilege for our adult children to want to be in relationship with their parents. I believe we did something right when our adult children want to be in relationship with us when they're adults, because I didn't have that experience. That was not my experience. I had a very tumultuous relationship with my parents for multiple reasons. I'm not going to go into that on this live stream. But to have adult children, because both of our boys are adults now, that actually want a relationship with us, I believe it shows something. It's saying something. And I'm so grateful for that. But I'm not stopping here just because they're adults. I still consider my son, because I know both of our boys are, my husband's not on social media, but our boys are on social media. So they're watching me. And I always think about that. I always think about, what am I saying? What am I showing? And now my bonus son is interested in entrepreneurship. My son is rethinking some things for his future. And I have parents that want to guide them through this process, to not just think about the now, but to think about what's next. And that was the conversation I was having with my son. Don't just think about the challenges you're having right now. Don't just think about the frustration that you're experiencing right now, but remember the vision, and that you're also co-creating for what's next. Because a trap some of us find ourselves in when it comes to our work as accomplished spiritual and feminine women, leaders, business owners, is that you'll get caught up in what's happening right now. The challenges you're facing, the frustrations that you're feeling, the fires that you're trying to put out, the pressure that you're experiencing, the projections that are coming your way, the public persecutions, that you sometimes can lose sight of what you're also creating next. And when we lose sight of that, that's when we find ourselves falling out of alignment with God and ourselves. And I started to notice that within myself a few years ago, where I said, I'm too focused on what's happening here, and I'm losing sight of also what I'm co-creating, my vision, what's next. Something beautiful happens when you reimagine your vision, where you realign yourself, reposition yourself to connect with that vision. You return to your natural state of being as feminine co-creator. What comes through you is miraculous. And I believe it's usually not something that would be possible unless you remember that you're not just creating for now, but you're also creating for what's next. There's been times in my marriage, I've been with my husband for a decade, where we had reached this pivotal moment in our sacred union where it was time for us to up-level as a couple. It was time for us to deepen inside of our connection and our closeness and our togetherness and our intimacy. But there was some friction that was happening. And there was a time where we got so focused on the friction, the now, that we were losing sight of also the vision of what was next and what we said we were co-creating. And when you do that, you lose time. You have these moments of amnesia where you forget. And so when we remembered, let's not forget it's not just about the now, but it's also about what we're creating next. It was like that friction, it dissolved itself. We reharmonized and came back together as one. It's like this beautiful braid of I'm fully embodied in my feminine, and he's fully embodied in his masculine. And Holy Spirit is the thread that has got us weaved together in this beautiful harmonic connection. And it's almost like this beautiful braid. Whereas before it felt like these individual pieces that were trying to figure out how to bring them together when we were just focused on the now, and we were just focused on the friction that was happening. But when we started to reimagine this vision, and we started to reimagine what we said that we wanted to co-create, when we started to reimagine why we're even here, why we said yes, something miraculous happened. The things that we used to have friction about dissolved. We stepped into a depth of connection, of harmony, that in 10 years we've never experienced with each other. I would say we're better now than in the beginning. And that to me is incredible, because how many people can say that? How many people can say a decade in, 2 decades in, 3 decades in, that this is better than the beginning? Not many, because many get complacent. Many just focused on the now. Many get caught up in complacency and the mundane. Not many think about also what they're co-creating for what's next. And I believe that the women I've been called to work with are accomplished spiritual women who don't just get caught up in the now, but they also are connected to this higher vision and these desires from God. And they're knowing that there's not just what's happening now, but I'm also co-creating what's next. And can I be aware and present with that? Can I be with that? Can I hold the multiple roles and responsibilities that I carry without losing myself to them? And I believe that's an art. The feminine art of leadership, the feminine art of womanhood, the feminine art of being a lover and a wife, the feminine art of showing up and creating impact in the world. And it's something I spent a year saying, you know what? I'm going to slow all the way down and master this embodiment of me and be more deeply embodied than I've ever been in my entire life. So that as I show up and I am guiding and supporting those I've been called to, that what comes through me is so powerful, palpable, potent, that it transforms them permanently. That they have such a strong encounter with Holy Spirit because of our work together, that they experience this long-lasting transformation, not just a quick little win. And my work has always been that way. But I wanted it to be even more powerful. And I knew that in order for it to be even more powerful, I had to lead myself first. And so when we're reimagining these new visions and these new possibilities, there's a level of self-leadership that's involved where it requires us to lead ourselves into a way of being that may have been foreign to us. Because you get familiar with the way you've been showing up in your life. You get familiar with the way you've been showing up in your relationship. You get familiar with the way you've been showing up in the work that you do or in your business. But when we are being called as accomplished spiritual women to not just focus on the now, but to also focus on what's next, I believe God is also reminding us that it's time to up-level in our self-leadership and step into the foreign and to lead ourselves in even new ways, to take our self-awareness to a level we have never experienced. The level of awareness that I experience right now is incredible. It's like the moment I think it and feel it is the moment I alchemize it. It doesn't linger. I don't carry stuff into the next day. It stays in that moment. And I believe that's what it means to be a powerful feminine co-creator. Because when you are living in that reality, you're no longer recreating the past. You're present with what's now, and you're co-creating what's next. And I believe that's what God has invited us into in this season. And I know there's a lot of distractions happening in the world. But can you observe it without absorbing it? Can you observe it, notice it without absorbing it, taking it in? Can you stay present? Can you stay centered? Can you stay grounded in God and remember who you are and why you came here? Because when I sit with that with myself, when I remember who I am and why I came here, I remember, oh, I came here to create a new generational blueprint for my lineage. You know what that means? I don't have time for the chaos. I don't have time for the distractions. I don't have time for these temporary disruptions, because the next highlight reel will show up and that'll be the next distraction people focus on. What I choose to focus on instead is, who have God called and created me to be for such a time as this? As a woman, as a lover, as a mother, and as a leader. And when I live my life in alignment with that, I experience miracles. I experience things that other people had to effort for more effortlessly. And I believe that's what's available for you too. There's a softening you're being invited into. There's a surrendering you're being invited into. There's a stillness that you're being invited into. Will you take heed? Will you listen to the internal nudges, the guidance from Holy Spirit that's saying, hey, listen, slow down, listen. Because the ego is loud, but the whispers coming from our soul, from Holy Spirit, is like a whisper. And you gotta slow down to hear it. Because if you don't, you'll miss it. Can you be present with the whispers from your soul so that you can listen and take heed when the instruction and the guidance comes? Now, I believe I was able to do that this last year because I primed myself for it. I primed myself for it. Before this last year, I had spent a few years going back into the lab of my own inner work, going deeper into having a more regulated nervous system, really looking at my unconscious crippling beliefs, assessing my identity and was it in alignment, my self-image. And I really went into some solid work. It's like the Mr. and I living in our beautiful no-build home that we closed on a year ago. And when we first signed the contract and everything, what was out here was just land with weeds all over it. And what they had to do was get the land prepared to build a foundation, and that took time. And then they poured the foundation, and they had to set the foundation, and that took time. And then there was a process of the building, putting it up, putting the structure up. And as I was witnessing this process happening, I was in my own process of being rebuilt from the inside out, of my nervous system being recalibrated, of me being more deeply embodied in my essence, of me reimagining my vision for myself, for my marriage, for my spiritual business, for my lineage. And it reminded me of why we get to choose a way that is not normal. Nothing about my life is normal, and I don't want it to be. Nothing about my life is status quo, and I don't want it to be. Nothing about my life makes logical sense, and I don't want it to be. Nothing about my life is something that you can compute on a calculator, and I don't want it to be. I want to live in the realm where nothing makes logical sense, but it makes absolute faith sense. And I believe the women I've been called to serve have that same inner knowing. There's a path where everyone follows where they say, how much money do you want to make a month, and then figure out the math and then do it. How many people do you want to impact and then figure out the math and then do it? And my journey has never been that. Everything that I have experienced in my life has been miraculous when I'm in alignment. I've been on the front cover of a magazine. I didn't pitch for it. I've stood on stages as a keynote speaker in front of hundreds of people. I didn't pitch for those opportunities. I've been on the same speaker panel with well-known actors and celebrities and people who are the costume designers of the Black Panther movie and on the film production, and I didn't pitch for that. I met my husband, the Mr., and I wasn't on any dating apps. God brought him to me. Manifested this new build home with my husband when my business was at the lowest it had been in years. Nothing about my life makes sense, and I don't want it to. And so when I was having this conversation with my son this morning, I had to remind him who he is and the lineage he comes from. We don't do what makes sense. We don't follow other people. We march to the beat of our own drum. That's who we are. We follow the guidance from God. We listen to the whispers from Holy Spirit. We remember that we're not just creating in the now, but we're also remembering the vision and creating for what's next. That's who we are. And to be able to have that type of conversation with my son and say, you need to remember who you are and the lineage you come from. You are anointed. You come from a lineage of people who are chosen and favored by God. That's who you are. Nothing about you will ever make logical sense. I don't care what your friends are experiencing. I don't care what your classmates are experiencing. I don't care what your colleagues are experiencing. You are favored, anointed, and chosen by God. That's who you are. And to be able to say that to my son, I felt so grateful because I've had to have those conversations with myself first. To feel that conviction. To be able to have that conversation with a client and a woman that I'm working with and to remind her, you are anointed, favored, and chosen by the Most High God. You did not come here to have regular results. You know, I'm reminded of a client that I worked with years, not too long ago. And she was comparing herself to her competitors. And she had capped herself at multiple six figures in her business. And we did work regulating her nervous system, bringing her back home to her feminine essence, realigning herself into that stillness so she could hear from Holy Spirit. And her creativity was back active again. And God gave her an idea like that gave her a multiple five-figure day in her business. Day. And she went on to have her first seven-figure year in her business by doing this type of work with me. She went on to transform her marriage, where they had been together for almost 2 decades, to where they were having the best sex they have ever had. And her marriage, she said, was better at that point than in the beginning because of this work. And sometimes we just need a reminder of, remember first things first. Remember what you came here to create. You're not just creating for the now. You're also co-creating for the next, and that it's bigger than you. I know that everything I'm co-creating in my life, in my marriage, in my spiritual business is bigger than me. I know this is about creating blueprints. I know this is about creating an example. I know this is about creating something that people actually want to model after. Not something that just looks good, but something that actually is everything that I've ever wanted. A lot of people have things that look really good. Their life looks just like so. Their relationship looks like just so. Their brand looks just like so. Their business looks just like so. But if you pull the curtain back, you may see something totally different. And while nobody's perfect and nothing is perfect, there's a difference between performance and pure truth and alignment. That's the reality I choose to live in and dwell in. So I hope that this message served you well on this beautiful Sunday, and that you remember that you are not just co-creating for the now, you are also co-creating for what's next. You are a legacy builder, you are a generational curse breaker and builder. We're not just breaking generational curses here, we're building new blueprints. And to do that, you've got to remember, we're not just focusing on what's now. We also have to stay connected to the vision of what's next. So I invite you to spend some time today with yourself. You know, I have my journal here, and ask God to give you a remembrance of why you came here, and reimagine your vision and connect with that feeling inside of your body. And lead your week in such a way where you remember this week, I'm not just creating for the now, I'm also creating for what's next. And can you hold that each moment, each day this week? And if you are a fellow accomplished spiritual woman who is ready to be more deeply embodied, so that you are experiencing deeper intimacy, greater impact, especially without hiding in plain sight. Because some of y'all show up online, I see you. You show up, you say the thing, you do the thing, but you're still hiding in plain sight. And experience more abundance without self-sacrificing, you can reach out to me and I can share with you ways you can work with me. I have bespoke options, 4-month and 9-month one-on-one options where I tailor your experience according to your unique needs and desires, so that we are maximizing our time together and maximizing your results. If you know someone who needs to hear this, please share this. Thank you for spending time with me. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your Sunday, and I will see you very soon. Take care now.